So now we're going to do something that's related to the quadratic formula. It's something that we can see from the quadratic formula. We're going to define this thing called a discriminant. And we always use a capital D for this. And it's just going to be b squared minus 4ac. What do AC and B stand for? Those are the coefficients that we had from the previous page, right? The coefficients of x squared, x, and the constant term, or whatever letter we're using instead of x, right? So the leading term in a quadratic equation, the leading term is A, right? The middle term, leading term's coefficient is A. Middle term's coefficient is B, and the C is the constant, just like in the previous page, no different. So what is this? This is just the inside of the square root when you use the quadratic formula. That's all it is. So if you know the quadratic formula, the discriminant is just it's the radicand of the radical part, right? Remember the radicands, the stuff inside the square root. So we just call that capital D, set D equal to that, b squared minus 4ac. We call that the discriminant. Now, why is the discriminant important? The discriminant we can use to test what kind of answers we have to a quadratic equation. Maybe we don't care what the answer is. We just care, is it a real number or is it a non-real complex number, like with an I? Or do I get just a single answer instead of two? And maybe you can tell by looking at it. When would you get an I? Well, when the stuff inside the square root is negative, right? In other words, if the discriminant is negative. See, so when I see the discriminant, I just picture the quadratic formula, and it tells me what the discriminant's telling me. So if the discriminant is 0, notice you'll have the square root of 0 is 0, you'll have plus or minus 0, so you'll just get a single answer, negative, opposite of b over 2a. And then if the discriminant is positive, of course, you get two real numbers. So it tells us, do we have one or two solutions to our quadratic? And are they real or are they non-real complex numbers? Are they real or not? Now, if A, B, and C are all real numbers, right, then that's what's required for this to work, is for all those to be real numbers. We haven't even talked about how you find this square root of I. That involves trigonometry. We do that in pre-calc. But, so we have to assume that A, B, and C are real numbers here, or this isn't going to work for us. In general, they could be complex numbers, but it just gets super complicated and people don't usually use it there. Okay, so if D is positive, the equation has two real solutions. That's because you're taking a square root in the quadratic formula. You're taking the square root of a positive number, so it's real. Positive number, so the plus will be different than the minus. Plus and minus square root, right? These here. Right? You'll get one for the plus and one for the minus, because this won't be 0 if D is positive. And it also won't give you an I if D is positive. So it's two real numbers, right? If D is 0, then this is square root of 0. There's no plus or minus 0. Those are both 0, right? So it's just opposite of b over 2a. It's the only solution. And then the last one, if d is negative, then you get two non-real complex solutions. In other words, you get things with i's, because you're doing square roots and negatives. It's not complicated, right? Once you know the formula, this is pretty straightforward. So here's an example. I've got this equation, 0 equals 2x squared minus 4x plus 1. I just got tired of writing the 0 on the right side. So I wrote it on the left. So first question is, what is the discriminant? Okay, so that's going to be D equals, right? B squared minus 4AC. I'm writing it down because I don't have it memorized yet, or I'm pretending I don't, okay? So what is B? That's a negative 4, but you're squaring it, so it's just 16, right? I actually wrote out all the numbers. 1 is C, 2 is A, negative 4. They're in alphabetical order, not that hard, right? So that's 16 minus 8, which is 8. So the discriminant is 8. Okay, so the next question is, what kind of solutions does the quadratic equation have? Well, the discriminant's positive, so it's going to be 2 real solutions. That's the answer. And so they'll have a multiple choice, right? 2 real solution, 1 real solution, or 2 non-real complex solutions. Or they might just say 2 non-real solutions to be brief about it. Okay? So it has 2 real solutions. It's that simple, okay? So that's just very closely related to the quadratic formula. I would do a bunch of quadratic formula problems until I've got it down, until you know that formula from memory, and then do this stuff. Okay, that's it with that.